Good morning. All right, we are about ready here. Welcome everybody who's coming into the room now. We got a bunch of people signed up today. Myself, Rick Coster. We got Anthony Tassi here as well. You will see us in 2 seconds. There we go.
Good morning. How are you guys? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so it's been a little while since we've got back on the webinar kick. We felt this was a good topic to start with. We've been getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of interest, concern.
Lots of notes.
Yeah, lots of notes today. Safety issues, all kinds of stuff we've been hearing with this transition to A2L refrigerants. So, you know, we figured it would be a good time. We wanted to get this out here. We're going to record this session today so you guys have access to it on our YouTube channel moving forward. As well as all of our other videos and some of the stuff. We got some stuff in the hopper right now that we've been building on, so we're excited to get that out in the next couple weeks. We got a good group today. We were a little shocked, I think. You know, we thought we were gonna just do this as a recording and throw it out there last week, and we're almost at 200 people registered today. So, and it seems to be growing. So like Anthony put in the chat, we got 4 handouts in there. So if you want to take a look, you can download them. I threw in our Wales Darby line sheet as well as our contact list. Right. I found Fujitsu released basically an ASHRAE 15.2 application guide, which really goes over some stuff that we're not going to cover in depth today as far as calculating refrigerant capacities and all of that stuff.
It's a little heavy for this morning.
Yeah, a little bit too much, makes your head hurt. So it's a pretty big lift there. So that's in there, download that. We also we threw in there for you to download the notes that Anthony has in front of him here. This was a product release, which is gonna cover a lot of the product, I guess you could say the transition roadmap, which we are gonna cover later on after the A2L portion of this. So you guys are up to speed on what's coming out, you know, what changes are being made on the equipment, stuff like that.
Nomenclature is important.
Nomenclature is important.
Always, we like that.
Yeah. So
what these letters mean.
Exactly. So we got about an hour or so here. No rush today. We want to answer all your questions. So please feel free to, you know, interact, communicate with us. You got a little chat box there. If you don't mind starting off, just let us know where you're tuning in from today. So yeah, Anthony's, you got that in the chat already? Okay, good. But yeah, so we want the interaction. Obviously, this is for you guys. I can't tell you how many phone calls we get in every week now with, you know, this topic in general. So we're gonna have some fun with it today, try to get some good information to you, and we'll go from there. So anything you want to add, Ann, before we get going?
No, it's just interesting to have reviews on this stuff. Obviously, the transitioning from what we've been doing to obviously what the standard or what we're going to see now and coming forward. It's I think there's a little bit, maybe as we get change is scary, right? A little bit of the sky is falling, but it's amazing to see how very similar to what we're already working with some tweaking or just reminding of, you know, best practice, not to the minimum, but maybe stepping up what we do for that best practice of install and what we do to make sure our systems are where they should, working with something like a A2L. So not to, you know, reveal too much in here. We're going to go through and it will hopefully answer some questions for you guys.
Absolutely. So,
for sure.
Jeff and Chris, good to see you guys. Appreciate you joining us. So, all right, so let's get this going. So obviously big topic, right? So we're going to go through a couple things here just to kind of line up how this is going to work out today. So this is an overview, right? So we're going to cover a lot of things as far as for installers, technicians, and then we'll get into some of the product stuff. I know we got a lot of friends here from our distribution, supply chain, and stuff like that. So definitely they have some good information they can add, and we can have a good day today. So this is not a certification to work with, you know, an A2L, right? That's not done by us or our manufacturer. There are people that do that, and that's where you would need to go for that. But so today is really just an overview of A2Ls and some of the concerns you may have, right? So this is kind of the layout. We're going to cover the flammability concerns, the safety. You know, I've heard this probably a dozen times, guys complaining about it in the truck, right? this thing's rolling around, not secured properly, what's going to happen? Am I going to go on fire? Is it going to explode? We've heard them all, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Storing refrigerant, we'll cover a tiny bit there. Working with A2Ls is probably where we're going to spend most of the time. That's been the big concern. So, and there is some concern there, but it's not as bad as everybody thinks it is. Product transition is another one we'll go over. This way everybody's up to speed, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. We encourage questions throughout. Don't wait to the end.
Sure.
So the more interactive you guys are, the more fun we have as well. So it's kind of dry when we get what we got.
So what is
almost
A2L?
100 people in a room and we can't see faces. So webinars are one of the worst, but we have some fun with this stuff. So now, Fujitsu's stance, if you have not heard, is, we're rolling into R32. Some manufacturers going to R454B. Some guys are using whatever they're using. We're using R32. So, it's got some, positives out of it. I think some good positives for us. It is a change, and I think that's where most people get a little freaked out. But for us, I think there's some better stuff that you're going to see moving forward as we kind of go through this today.
Right.
That makes it, a great refrigerant. It is a single compound, right? It's not a blend like we're used to with 410A, right? So we're kind of going back to the R22 days, right? So it's a single refrigerant, can be charged as either a liquid or a vapor.
Right.
I can't wait to talk about the efficiency side because that's the fun part, right? So it's been used forever. This isn't brand new, right? And if you've worked with 410A, you've already worked with R32 just in a different capacity, right? Being a blend 410A, it's 50% R32. So, I heard something, and I know Anthony and I have been listening to a lot of, other people's conversations and webinars, when it comes to A2Ls. So we've heard some pretty cool stuff in different ways to kind of describe this stuff. But basically what we're using now is a pure or single compound is like we're taking a rev limiter off of 410A, right? And I love the way somebody we were listening to mentioned it is R32 had another compound that was really like a flame suppressant is what it was.
R410A
right?
had another.
410A had it, right.
Well, R32, we've been working with this in a mixture of R410A
and R125.
And R125.
Right.
And the R125 was
Basically,
stated
rev limiter, yeah.
for a retardant.
Right.
So we've been working with this component of R32 with a blend, and now we're taking everything out and going straight R32.
Correct.
It has some beneficial factors. One, obviously, for the mandate, but also on the efficiency side. So the other thing is just with this, because now that propagation or the flame potential is that we just have to have better practice and understanding, which we'll cover.
Yeah, well, we actually have to use the safety things we learned
that we've been doing
years ago.
We should have been doing.
And that we should be doing, right? So nothing's changed. We just got to be more aware. So let's move forward there. So
Please.
Why are we doing a transition, right? Why is R32, 454B, or any A2L being considered, right? So we talk about the ozone depletion all the time, right? So, we're trying to lower that GWP, right? Global warming potential, and get it as low as possible. So you're going to see some numbers as we kind of move forward here as the differences. Get this, there we go. So just the comparison of R32 to 410A, you can see, we have that 50-50 blend. There's that HFC 125. So that's, as Anthony mentioned, that's that flame retardant, that's with, R32. So described, like I was just mentioning, it's like a little rev limiter. Now we take the rev limiter off. We're using R32 as a pure, yes, it's a mildly flammable refrigerant, but you'll feel more comfortable, I promise, in the next couple of minutes, right?
Key, yeah.
But now having that, we're going to get all the efficiency benefits and some of the other stuff out of it, right? So if we look down below at the GWP, right, we're talking 675 with R32 compared to 2088. And I want to say that benchmark that we had to get under was 700. Right? So now, yes, some other manufacturers went with 454B, which has a lower, GWP than R32. I'm guessing, and just through conversation is they're just trying to avoid the next transition, right? And there's no guarantee. The next transition could be 200 for all we know. We'll find out later on down the road. But we are underneath that 700. That's the biggest thing there. So it's much lower than what 410A is. So that's the one reason we're doing this transition. And here's a chart that kind of shows a bunch of other guys. You can see that 454B with the, what is it, 466?
466,
right?
yeah.
So if they came out and said we're under 500, yeah, maybe some guys don't have to. But you know, I'm like it. 454B is also a blend. So again,
1234 YF.
Yeah.
So just be aware, as we are lowering that GWP, that's when we have that rising of flammability. So right now we kind of took the stepping stone. We didn't go as low as maybe other people in choices with that refrigerant. We are below the 700. We're going to grow and learn again to be that safety side of everything from transportation, storage, installation, learn about the equipment, what they're doing to change as well. So.
Yep. So one of the things, and this might get a little confusing in the big picture here, you know, what you're seeing in this little graph is, you know, with 410A to R32, we're seeing a higher capacity, right? You know, potential refrigerant capacity, 1.6 times that of 410A, as you can see there.
Right.
You know, what that really means in our terms is we're more efficient, right? That's the biggest way to say it is, you know, we are more efficient than 410A. There is one little bullet point here that I love. I saw this, like pointing out, is down here is there's a total reduction of about 30%, you know, against, and then that's the refrigerant volume, right? Than a 410A system. So what does that mean for us? You know, potentially some smaller line set sizes, smaller equipment, coils, stuff like that, right? So that's
cost,
a big difference.
Perhaps weighing in additionals, all those things.
Yeah. So charge volume reduction is a big part of it. So. Yeah, the efficiency is the exciting part. So again,
look at the positives on this stuff.
Absolutely, that's what we're here for. So again, the elephant in the room is what? You know, the concerns on safety. There's a bunch of different stuff. Like I said, we've been getting phone calls like crazy. If you don't mind, those of you tuning in, if you have access and you can chat something in for us, you know, what is your major concern? You know, why were you joining today? Was it, you know, safety concerns, performance concerns, you know, transportation, whatever it is, you know, just love to hear what your thoughts are.
You don't like the new color?
Yeah, right.
People are funny.
All the cans the same color is a big one. I've heard that complaint, but yeah, everybody has their thing. And I think after today, you might feel a little bit more comfortable, whatever it is, right? So, and let's move forward here. Right, so that's the biggest thing is the rumors and misconceptions. I'm going to blow up. This thing's going to go on fire. It's not the case.
Just to clarify, in that list a couple slides back, we talked about the oil and said synthetic. So in regards to what R14 was, hydro.
The difference, we're using the same oil as 410A. The biggest difference is the weight of the oil. So it's a little bit different weight is what I was told.
Oh, okay.
So same oil. So that's another thing is the benefit of using the same oil is we can utilize the line sets in some cases when we're doing transitions from 410A equipment to R32. And that's another publication that I know Fujitsu is looking to release shortly as far as, you know, the procedures and what we need to do.
What's the word I'm looking for? Hydro, it's not hydrostatic, hydro.
You're using big words.
I know, SAT words, too early.
Too early.
That's a $3 word right there. So it's a POE?
Yes.
Oh, all right. I thought it was mineral, but that's right.
Nope. POE.
That's why we have notes.
POE.
Write shit down.
That's it. So if you're not familiar with some of the classes of refrigerants, right, and how, you know, ASHRAE kind of, you know, has their safety rating system, you know, you got non-toxic refrigerants, which they consider an A class. We got toxic refrigerants that are Bs, and then you'll see some numbers from 1 to 3, and that's what basically labels your level of flammability, really. So that's your scale there. 1 being non-flammable, which is what we've been working with 410A. You know, that was an A1 refrigerant, and 3 being the most flammable. You know, that would be like a propane in your case. So an R290 is something like that. So we'll take a look. The next slide is going to show you a little better there. So R32 and 454B are considered A2Ls, right? So there's that R22 410A at an A1 down below, right? R290 propane is A3. So a lot of this stuff too, which is funny, and I know a lot of people are starting to freak out a little bit now, but we've been working, we've seen it, we've been around it. You know, if you're going and seeing vending machines, you're going to grab a soda or something, those could be propane. Your cars have been running around with, a lot of these refrigerants for the last maybe 10 years. So it's not brand new stuff, and even R32 in the Fujitsu world, they've been using this in Europe and other places, so it's not really new. It's just for us here in the States.
They're in like
right?
2 decades at this point.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
we're just kind of watching what the rest does, and then we're going to follow. And
Yeah.
this might be a little stepping stone until we really maybe get somewhere for that reduction of.
Yeah. There's always going to be a change, right?
Sure is.
Always going to build on it. So when we talk about how they test the refrigerants, and this might give you a better understanding on the flammability, capabilities of, refrigerants and stuff like that, but this is their testing procedure, right? So they have this little beaker. It has a little magnetic stirring fan in there to move the refrigerant around in the air. They inject the gas into this little beaker. They have a little electrode that's going to spark. And then if you notice this little 90-degree little cone here, that's basically the test. If you stay within this little cone area, you're not considered really flammable, and if you're outside the cone, we're now flammable, right? So when you look at, we got some great images here, and a lot of these slides, Fujitsu worked with ESCO Institute, which are awesome guys. We'll probably plug them a bunch more here.
Listening to Jason earlier.
Yeah, they do a good job with these presentations and some of the videos and stuff and all their awareness. So we appreciate being able to use their slides. But so looking at some of the tests, right? So this is your 410A, right? This is an A1 refrigerant in this test. It's a little hard to see the cone there because there's no flame, right? You don't see anything. There's no flame propagation. What does that mean? In order for me to maintain a flame, I'm going to have a constant ignition source. And even at that, we barely have anything going on, inside. So going from a class 1 now to a class 2L, which is where we're going to be, right? You can see we're still pretty much inside that cone, right?
Like jellyfish.
Yeah.
It's hard to see. There's a solid, more defined V line down there.
Right. I mean, you can see the lines there.
Squint.
Maybe the one over here, you kind of seeing it goes out. Here's your line, but we're still within that. But there is a flame, right? So that's why it's still considered a flammable refrigerant. And mildly flammable. It's got its own category with the L now, but it really doesn't go far. So for you to have a ignition, of an A2L on a job site, you pretty much have to hold a torch to it.
Takes a lot.
You're right. And keep it there and never lose that flame, otherwise it's just going to fail. And this is your class 2s, right? So it's a little bit more than what we just saw as a 2L, where we're just getting outside that cone, but it's not considered a highly flammable refrigerant because we still have to have a constant ignition source there to keep that flame going, right? And then finally, we got class 3s where we have an actual developed flame. Right? All we need is a spark. That's R290, which is propane. It's well outside that cone area, so that is a highly flammable refrigerant. Right? It doesn't need a consistent ignition source there. So it kind of give you an idea on what that test looks like. Now, when you're talking about, and again, this is kind of the concerns and, what we were asking people to plug in the chat, some of the phone calls we've been getting, everything from, flammability, ignition of a refrigerant leak during, operation, or maybe when you're servicing the equipment, there's a little bit of a release that could light up, or, what happens if there was a fire in a house? You just saw the little beaker test, is it going to flame out in A2L? Yeah, you're going to get that little blue flame and that's it, it's done. As soon as you lose that flame, it's done. In a truck, we've heard this before, the transit, what's going to happen if I had a leak? It's no different than any other refrigerant you worked on. Suffocation is a factor, I can't even say the word asphyxiation.
Asphyxiation, yeah.
So you'll see more about this in a few minutes, but those are concerns, and it's the same safety protocols we need, we should be following, from the get-go. But when it comes, just to touch on a little bit more of the flammability, and this brings me back to when I first got into the oil business. We've always had, I remember getting in the truck the first day and smelling the fuel oil, and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to die in this thing. This truck's going to blow up, with me driving it. And, you think about the differences between like a fuel oil and gasoline, right? Or diesel and gasoline. Some fluids, just like refrigerants, have higher flammability rates. If I took a bucket of gas and throw a match in there, you're going to have a bomb. That thing's going to go off, right? All it needs is that tiny little flame. Fuel oil is different. I
Right.
could take a match. I've watched some of these old timers, probably not the safety videos you wanted to watch, but the old timers throwing their cigarettes into an oil bucket when they're done servicing their oil burner, you know? It's not going to go up. It doesn't have the same flammability, right? So you can have, you know, the same maybe, you know, okay, it's a refrigerant. Just because one is highly flammable doesn't mean the rest of them are. And that's the situation we're working with now is, you know, an A2L is like diesel and your R290, well, is propane, but that's like your gasoline, right? So it's got a very high, you know, flammability rate compared to what we're working on now. So I think the safety concerns of flame should be, you know, of course, it's something we should be aware of. You know, we'll talk about that in a few minutes as far as, you know, what we do out on the job site, but it's not as flammable as everybody thinks.
Right. Practice of what we're doing should increase understanding what we should have been doing all along.
Correct. Absolutely.
Not to the minimum.
Yep.
Please.
So based on the ASHRAE standards and the testing that you saw, you know, A2Ls are really, they're only mildly flammable, right? You still want to take proper precautions, as we just said, you know, and we're going to talk about what those precautions are, just so everybody has a little review. And if you didn't know, you will know. You know, it's definitely better for the environment. That's one of the major reasons we're doing this. And yeah, higher efficiency is something I'm really looking forward to. So refrigerant safety and awareness, right? It doesn't say A2L safety and awareness, it's refrigerant safety and awareness, right? So it's not, it shouldn't make a difference, you know, what refrigerant you're working on. We should always be aware of this stuff, you know. We want to make sure we're not, if we're in a small area, confined space, right? We got to worry about, again, refrigerants are heavier than air. They're going to displace oxygen. So yeah, we're going to lead to suffocation or asphyxiation. Some refrigerants are toxic. So if you're all working with something like that, again, it's the same safety concerns and safety awareness when you're out there in the field. So refrigerant cylinders, when we talk about the traveling, again, we're not going to treat them any differently. Maybe in the storage and the way we configure them in the truck, we will. We're going to see that in a few minutes when we get to that. But again, they're under pressure. You know, we want to make sure if that truck is sitting in the sun all day, if you don't have ventilation in there, those cylinders should not be exceeding, you know, a temperature, a stored area temperature of 125 degrees. It could blow and rupture. You know, some tanks have a rupture disc. We're going to talk about A2L tanks that are now going to have like a relief valve. So a rupture seal on a tank is a one-time, right?
Right.
That pressure builds up and it pops that rupture disc, you're done. It dumps that whole tank.
That's
right?
correct.
Where with A2Ls, we're now required to have, or manufacturers are required to have a relief valve. So it is a resettable disc. So it will release a little bit of that vapor, and then
once the pressure
drops down,
exactly,
come down. So refillable cylinders, like all your recovery tanks out there, no different. We don't want to fill them more than 80% of their capacity.
They are 20 pounders though.
Yeah,
20-pound cans.
Well, there's a couple. Yeah, there's two different sizes guys see, and I know in some of the videos, it's even most guys haven't even seen an A2L, you know, compatible tank yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just haven't seen them or haven't seen them built. So here's that, we mentioned it before, right? So this is probably one of the things I hear guys griping over a lot too, is the changing colors of the tank. How many tanks we're gonna have on? They're all gonna be the same color. There's other things we can complain about. It's not the end of the world, right? But yeah, that's something, and that's not brand new, right? So they've been standardizing on colors for a long time now.
It's a visual thing.
Yeah, so A2Ls, what you're gonna notice is you're gonna have a red band at the top of the container to kind of identify that it is a flammable, whether it's mildly flammable, doesn't make a difference.
And noting which refrigerant it is as A2Ls.
It should be, it better be. You know, as far as, you know, another safety concern, anytime we're working around a flame or anything like that, we should have some sort of fire extinguisher. That's a Class B powder, dry powder. Yep, charged, hopefully within the, you know, it's not expired.
Yeah,
you know.
like the one in my kitchen.
Exactly.
I need to get that blanket.
All right, so system installation, right? That doesn't change much, right? Your procedures aren't really going to change a lot. You know, when we're doing, you know, especially brand new, you know, I've had this conversation with guys when we're doing a brand new install. Technically, we're not even exposing ourselves to the A2L, right? That's still sealed in the condenser. You know, we're evacuating, you know, purging, brazing lines that are hopefully, you know, virgin lines. They haven't even touched a refrigerant yet. So, your recovery process, not recovery, I'm sorry, your evacuation process, your pressure testing process, all of that stuff is really going to stay the same. It's when we're out there servicing maybe a system that could have a leak in it, that's where we got to up our, concerns and, just pay more attention. Other differences pre-installation, I'm going to say that's probably the biggest thing there is, just being more aware of your environment, what you're seeing around. We'll talk about it a couple of times as we move forward here, but if you're working on, you got that old water heater sitting next to the maybe a what do you call it, a coil, in a basement or something like that with a standing pilot. Yeah, I got a constant source. So if I'm dropping, my refrigerant's dropping and I have a high capacity, yeah, that's something I want to be, that's a safety concern, right?
Right.
So always want to go back to our manufacturer's installation guide, follow their procedures. If you have questions, you reach out to us as a rep and we'll get you the answers you need if we don't have them. So, this is a big change going forward too, is the labeling. This has been one that's popped up a couple times. I remember, the first time I got the phone call, the guy was freaking out. I got to now explain to homeowners that this thing's, could go on fire. No, it's not. We're overreacting here. We have to label everything. If there is a mildly refrigerant, highly flammable, doesn't matter. It has to have that label on it. It's not going to be all big, on the side of the machine, but it's going to be there. And it's just like anything else. You probably never, even if I told you now that there was a UL stamp on the side, you probably don't even remember it unless you went and looked at one right now.
And you're referring to both in and outdoor.
Everything. Anything that's compatible with a A2L is going to have, or really just have a flammable refrigerant, it's going to have this label on it.
That's right.
So it's something you're going to see. You're going to have people asking you, so you want to be able to educate them on, the flammability. It's not a major concern right now with mildly flammable refrigerants. I remember when we changed some of the labeling on boxes because of the great state of California, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I want to say, maybe probably around COVID times. I had a contractor whose homeowner saw on the box that it said that, in the state of California, this could cause cancer,
Right.
Yeah, if you ate the cardboard, you could get cancer, right? But it's a label, and a homeowner's going to see it at some point. They're going to have a concern, and it's up to us to educate them and provide the right information. So just making everybody aware. This is something new as well, and I don't have my head wrapped around this totally, but it seems there's going to be a permanent label required by UL that's going to be filled out by the installing technician. And basically, from the gist I'm getting is it's basically on the refrigerant charge, how much additional charge was put in, stuff like that. So yeah, we have volume, and there's some calculations again, that we're not going to cover, but it's in that guide in your download center there. So make sure you take that, your handouts. How are we doing on questions? Anything coming? Keep rolling.
Kind of messed it up a little bit, but I think we're pretty solid. There's nothing that hasn't been answered.
All right. You guys have anything, please just throw it out there.
I believe everyone's listening and hearing and seeing, so that's a good thing.
Yep. So again, just continuing on with some job site safety, we want to be, like I mentioned, with the, standing pilot water heater, those are becoming hopefully dinosaurs at this point, and weeding them out as we get
ignition
into
of a furnace, or there's multiple ignition points in a home, or even what you're bringing with you on a site, so
absolutely, and that's really the big concern, and we hear this, and I've heard this term a bunch of times, is the 10-foot rule, right? And when we talk about when we get on site, where is our work area, whether it's be at the condenser or like you said, at the air handler, take a look 10 feet around you. What's around? Is there an ignition source?
Somebody walking on with a lit cigarette if they're still smoking.
Exactly. Where are your tanks? Where are you keeping them? Anything within 10 feet. You just want to make sure we don't have an ignition source. Power turned off, lockout, tag out. That's a procedure we've been using for a long time now. And you got to keep in mind too, like a lot of these safety concerns may not, it might not directly relate to like even a 410A, right? Because of an ignition source, you're not going to get the flame out of it, right? But it's the same standards, whether it's an A1 or an A3, right? So you still want to have the same concerns and treat them as if, they were a highly flammable refrigerant. So, it's job site ventilation. you're in a small area, we want to make sure we got some sort of ventilation, or maybe go down there at the lowest point with a little bit of a refrigerant detector, stuff like that. And we're going to talk a little bit about the equipment coming out now and which units are going to have some of this, basically refrigerant sensors, gas sensors,
Right.
if there was a compromise in the tubing or a coil or something like that. So
These are all based on the manufacturer's, this is going to be on board. It's nothing
Correct.
you're adding or
Yep.
needing to maybe calibrate based off of volume, if that should come to it. Maybe it's a larger system, commercials, but
yeah, you might have some other stuff there or third
kind of
party.
self-sensing and even audible, I understand too, listening.
Could be, yep,
It's like an Alexa in your house, it's always listening.
just what you need.
Yeah, right.
Just what you need.
Play country.
All right. So again, we talked about the Class B fire extinguisher. We just want to make sure the components we're using as well. Again, you're going to start to see compatibility on, maybe not our systems as far as mini splits go, but unitary equipment. You're going to see filter dryers that are compatible, stuff like that. So that's going to be a big one. The protection equipment you've been using is the same as what you should be using going forward. It doesn't change.
That's right.
The gloves for sure, definitely some kind of eye protection. That's a huge
Other than
one
the
right there.
flammability, we have high pressure. So, you're opening, cutting something, gas is coming at you pretty fast and furious. Protect yourself, your eyes,
Yeah, at least for what we're talking about, R32, that's one thing that's not going to change a lot is the pressures are going to be very similar. So if that was a concern, hopefully you're hearing this, but the pressures are very similar to what 410A was. So not a lot to worry about there. So This has been a big topic, right? So we obviously went out of the tool guys. We work with a lot of them. I buy way too many of them, but tool safety has been a thing. It's been a conversation. And when you're talking about flammable refrigerants, this didn't just sneak up. We kind of knew that we were going this direction for a little time now. So there's been, our friends at Navic, Field Piece, a lot of these guys have already started developing, and I know Navic has a huge line of all, A2L or flammable refrigerant, compatible equipment. We've learned a lot from those guys in the last couple of weeks. So, there's some good stuff there, refrigerant hoses, gauges, stuff like that. You definitely want to make sure we got the right stuff. When it comes to hand tools, it's the same stuff. But really the biggest difference when we say A2L compliant, tools, you got to make sure that there's no sparks, there's no arcs. So they're using a lot of, brushless motor, DC driven stuff, inverter, so they are not spark and no arc. So they are compatible with all A2Ls or just flammable refrigerants in general. So take a look at those guys, check out your distributors and see what the latest and greatest is.
I believe there was something that we listened to, verified versus certified.
Well, there's UL listed and there's UL verified.
Right.
So you can have a piece of equipment, that is UL listed, which most of them are, but UL verified means that they actually took that machine and they put it through the paces and all the safety concerns with the, flammable refrigerants, and then when they pass. The biggest difference is, as we've heard, was like a $30,000 application fee. That's the difference, go from listed to verified.
It's just separating, and just showing you the differences and why.
Yeah, so from your vacuum pump, your recovery machine that you should have, the old school, 5-gallon bucket of water, those days are over. If that's the way you're running your business, you got to think again. It's not the way we do things.
Right.
There are proper procedures and stuff like that, so we want to follow them. And do you want to add before we move on, tools-wise?
It just, if we're not going to get into it, the idea of maybe unbrazing versus cutting out, and
absolutely.
So those are big changes maybe to understand. Again, the stuff has been in our wheelhouse with our automobiles and other parts of our homes. So again, just awareness and how we really should be and have been needing to. So we just need to step it up if we're really concerned about this more, mild flammability.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit more in a few minutes.
Good.
Just to get the transportation thing out of here too, right? So, what is the big concern? All right, this thing's rolling around a truck. It's no different. We asked it, we've heard that it had to be vertical. That is not the case.
Right.
They can be laid down, but the relief valve portion has to be at the 12 o'clock position.
Noon high.
This way there is some contact with the vapor inside the tank. This way, if you did have a compromise, the pressure built up in the tank, that relief valve is going to dump a little bit of that vapor, pressure drops, it closes, and that's it. So you get a small release out of the can, you know, compared to maybe a rupture disc dumping the entire charge, right? So that's the big difference, you know, moving forward as far as transportation. Other than that, everything else should be the same. If you have concerns, again, that's not a manufacturer thing, that's more of a DOT thing at that point, you know, so reach out to your local Department of Transportation. And there you go, right? Dry powder, you know, what are their rules? So they have their 25-foot rule, you know, no flame, no smoking, you know, written inventory, stuff like that. So, you know, those are things that have always played a part. It's just now you're going to have to, you know, really follow them. You know, that's a big change. No more rule break. Again, we're going to leave the DOT stuff to those guys. You know, if you have questions about it, placard, stuff like that, you know, definitely reach out. We can definitely get some more information moving forward. You know, storage, warehousing, stuff like that. There has been a lot of changes there. You know, some of them clear, some unclear, but, you know, really what it comes down to is knowing the volume of the space, you know, how much refrigerant we're going to have there. Again, that's a calculation. We're not going to get into the calculations this morning, but, you know, we got to know how much is going to be there. Is there a ventilated space? Do we have some kind of mechanical ventilation that's constantly going, you know, because we can store more refrigerant if we have ventilation than if we didn't, right? Because we're depleting that, you know, chance of having a concentration of refrigerant in that space. You know, so that's a big thing. And there is third-party stuff out there, which you're going to see in a few minutes as far as refrigerant mitigation, you know, alarms, like you mentioned, audible stuff,
Yeah.
Pump down systems, stuff like that. So
solenoids shutting down,
yeah,
things of that nature.
Yep.
Again, volume, size of system, these things are factors going from maybe a single head mini split where it might be just on board versus something that has to be outside and provided.
Yeah.
Again, storage, you know, volume of air, all those things are factors. And
yeah, and again, playing the part, right? We're talking about, yeah, we're not going to get too deep into that, but, you know, as far as, you know, being able to have more refrigerant in a space, if that's a concern, obviously having that ventilation I mentioned, having maybe a sprinkler system installed, those are all different things that are going to increase the amount that you can safely, you know, store in your facility. This kind of continues on as far as the, you know, the refrigerant concentration limits. You know, there is different classifications, as we were saying.
A lot of acronyms.
So yeah, a lot, you know, but based on volume, right? And that's what it all comes down to. So there are some calculations there based on your cubic feet, your total volume of the space, again, maximum refrigerant levels or capacity levels and all of that stuff. Well, concentration is the word they use. So there are different ways of kind of mitigating that. Like we said, you know, there are a lot of third-party things out there that'll help you. We're not so much into the storage side of the refrigerant, as far as like the equipment's totally different. Something you want to touch on it real quick?
Well, I'm kind of tapping into something here. Yeah, it was just about, if I can find it now. Where did you go?
Just scroll down.
Which one?
Keep going.
I am. It is at the top now.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
There is a leak.
I got a question. I just want to field it for the.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out who the gentleman's name was. See, that's where I'm screwing this up.
We need pressure test. Yeah, so okay, so we're going to get into that. So keep that one up there.
Okay. Hold that question about the R410A and filling system add dye.
Exactly. We'll talk about that in a second.
Read the labels.
So these are some of those devices I was talking about before we move on here, as far as refrigeration concentration limits and how we kind of, you know, the mitigation requirements. So they have, you know, active alarms, as I mentioned, permanent space ventilation, constant flow blowers, you know, and then they have actual automatic refrigerant pump downs. So again, there's many different options out there depending on the situation you may be running into. This chart kind of just shows you some of those limits, right? So where we were at 410A.
Just to say AHJ also might.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So again, it could be over here, it could be over there, different. So just be aware.
Yeah.
What's going to be possibly, you know, maybe asked of, required of this area, system, install, whatever.
Exactly. All right, give me back that. So just kind of, you know, 410A has a refrigerant concentration limit of 26 pounds per 1,000 cubic feet, right? So just kind of give you an idea on what we're looking at moving forward. You know, now we're going to R32, which is going to bring us into refrigerant concentration limit of 4.8 pounds per 1,000 cubic feet, right? So that same area where you had 26 pounds per 1,000, now we're at 4.8, which I think that number is actually a little bit lower now too. So yeah, not going in our favor when it comes down to storage and refrigerant concentration, right? So and not a huge difference. Well, there is a huge difference, I guess, going to 454B. We're looking at 22 pounds per 1,000 cubic feet. So it is a big drop off from the 454B to R32 as well. So I mentioned before the components, right? So Anthony mentioned this UL listed and verified and stuff like that. But you know, there are a lot of components out there today that obviously have to go through their own testing procedures and stuff like that. So we just want to make sure we are seeing those labels on there, that little flammable that tells us that we are compatible with an A2L. Keeping Anthony busy over there.
You know, all of a sudden I can see shit again.
All right, so talking about cams, I see a couple questions there, right? So you got that guy, so good, awesome. Appreciate the interaction. So when we talk about recovery, right, it's not a 5-gallon bucket filled with water, right? It's a refrigerant tank with a refrigerant machine, right, that we're gonna actually pull the refrigerant out and pump it into this tank, right? So it has to be approved, and this is where we've heard there's been challenges. You guys may know better than us at this point, but you know, finding an A2L compatible cylinder, not sure how much recovery you're doing with A2Ls at this point, you know, maybe in the refrigeration world more than the air conditioning world, where they've been used for a long time. But you know, it's no different, your procedures, it's just the equipment changes a little bit. Like I said before, it's got to be arc proof, you know, it's no sparks or anything like that. So the electrical connections are a little different. The compressors they're using in them, the motors that they're using, you know, especially on like the vacuum pump side, they're going from the PSC motors to now DC inverter or, you know, ECM motors, stuff like that. So there is no spark in the machine. So that's what makes it compatible. So two most common reasons, right, to recover a system is what? For repair and for disposal, right? So we're probably going to see the repair side, I would hope, you know, sooner than, you know, we're going to see the disposal, you know, but when it comes to A2Ls, right, we're just kind of getting involved with that now. But, you know, even if you're taking a 410A system out, it's the same procedure, right? So you can use the same machine on it. You don't have to use, you know, a non-A2L compliant pump, you know, on 410A and then use a different pump for this. You can use the same, you know, pump now if you're going out there and shopping and getting an A2L compliant, switch your systems over and you'll be ready to go for anything that you're going to touch. Again, here's that 10-foot. I saw a 25-foot rule before. You know, you just want to be aware, again, of where we work. You know, what's our environment look like? Is there an ignition source? Is there people coming around smoke on their lunch break, smoking their cigarettes, you know, stuff like that. You know, so those are some of those concerns.
We'll have to hand out 10-foot rulers at our
10-foot rulers, yeah.
trainings.
We'll do that on the next one, right? So I know, Anthony, you just mentioned this as far as brazing, right? So,
Sure.
You know, anytime we're brazing a system, there's a concern that there's refrigerant still in there, right? And we've seen it, and then I listened to somebody with a little comparison the other day, you know, where you know, maybe you've been unbrazing, you know, a line set or a compressor and you see this little flame come out, you know, and that little blue flame kind of bursts out. That is 410A and that is the flame, right?
That's right.
So you will see the 410A go on fire, but you take that flame away, it's gone, you know, and that's the same thing as the A2Ls. It's a good example, and I'm sure if you've been doing this for a while, you've seen that, you know, working on a system. So you have to recover everything first. You know, with the A2L, like, it's really the importance here is to, before you start unbrazing a system or really getting that flame out on that pipe, is you need to flush out with nitrogen. You know, and there are some calculators out there. I've seen some guys using online that really calculate the amount of volume based on your line set sizes, and will tell you how much nitrogen you got to flow to make sure you're purging everything. You know, if you're flowing, you know, at a couple PSI and you got a high volume system, it might take a little while to get all that nitrogen through the system and purge all of your refrigerant and stuff out of it. So we don't want to just throw it on there, get a little flow and just put the torch on there. You want to purge it properly, right? So if there are any questions on there, we'll touch a little bit more on there. But it's the same thing. This is no different than what you've been doing in the past. Low pressure nitrogen purge, half to 2 psi during the brazing process. Yeah, do you want to keep a fire extinguisher nearby? You should always do that. If you're in a space where you think there's some safety concerns, be prepared. You don't want to be running for a hose after the fact or trying to find some kind of means of, getting that fire out.
Water's more damage.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't own that house.
That's it. All right. So leak testing, again, this is not anything different. We're going to charge that system, after we install, whether we're flaring the lines, brazing the lines, we're still going to do our pressure test. Fujitsu, we've been preaching, 550, 600 PSI, with the 410A. It's no different with the R32 that we're going to see now. So we want to make sure we don't have a leak. I like a lot of the digital gauges now because you can really see a leak, on the pressure test side. When you hook up that vacuum pump and you're pulling all that moisture, that's not a leak test,
right.
I think we kind of skip the pressure test sometimes, just thinking, okay, if I can't pull a vacuum, then I must have a leak, and that's not the way we should be doing things. We want to pressure test the system properly, verify that there is no leak, if you have those digital gauges that are really, reactive to leaks, you don't need much time. And I think we were listening to somebody not too long ago say, the old rule of thumb was, all right, let's get this thing, sealed up by lunchtime, get the nitrogen in there and go to lunch and come back after an hour. What is that pressure? Did it drop? But we're looking on a gauge, a compound gauge, that you don't see those differences. You don't see those small fluctuations, where with a digital gauge in 5-10 minutes, you're going to see a difference. If you have a leak in that system, especially a large leak. So some of those smaller leaks might take a little bit more time, but I think just having the right tools is really that reason for that there. So yeah, leak testing does not change. This bottom bullet point here, with the using a A2L, A2 or A3 as a trace gas, you must not exceed 25%, right, of the refrigerant for that lower flammability. They call it LFL. So I don't know. There's better ways to test. I guess sometimes trying to find those harder leaks, you might need a refrigerant trace gas. I had not had to do that, luckily, in my career, so it's pretty good at finding leaks. Couple more bullet points here just on leak testing. After a system installation repair, right, this is the first task, right? Purge that thing out, nitrogen, get it up there to 600 PSI, make sure that thing is holding. Once that thing is leak free, now we can kind of purge that nitrogen out of there, get it down, and start evacuating the system, right? We say below 300 microns, shut off, and we don't want to see it rise above 500 over a 30-minute period, right? If we're working on a brand new install, right, pretty simple, right? We don't have refrigerant in there. There's not a lot of moisture. Hopefully those line sets were sealed when you brought them on site, so that shouldn't be a huge concern. But if they have been on site for a little while, purge out with nitrogen, make sure you get all that moisture out of there. Same thing, 300 microns, get it down there, let it hold under 500 for a 30-minute period. And we want to break that vacuum with the refrigerant in the system. And hopefully we don't have to add additional charge and all of that stuff, make this job nice and easy. So I see you, before we get into the product side of things here, anything you want to touch on? I know.
Well, people are asking about 410 to R32 and no need for flushing, and the truth is you cannot have interchanging equipment, right? So we can't have part R410A equipment and part R32. Is there some cases where the line sets can be reused? Yes.
Correct, yeah.
And therefore that would be.
And those bulletins are going to be coming out shortly. If they're not available right this second, I have not. I got to take a peek myself, but I know Fujitsu was working on basically a white paper on transitioning your line sets from maybe a 410A system to an R32. So if that's not out, it will be out shortly. But yeah, it's proper practice, right? What it comes down to is, yes, it's going to be a similar oil or the same oil. So there's not a huge concern of mixing the oils in the system like there was going from an R22 to a 410A, where we were using two, dissimilar oils.
Correct.
So and that was the whole purpose of a flush, was to get all the oil out of the system and the excess refrigerant, anything else that was left there. So that's a good question. Appreciate that. Did you touch base on the other one?
Yeah, I'm just going to hint upon that now. It was more or less with dyes or chemicals, and then that's something that we want to avoid at all costs. I understand, you know, we always just say to people, if this is your last resort, well then, yeah, but you might, you know, you might become the warranty going forward. Anything going back to the manufacturer, they pretty much will just deny. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think the best practice is to pressure test, good practice with a micron gauge.
Yep.
And then go forward from there.
Yeah, as long as they match and we got the right size line sets and all of that, and, you know, they're not compromised, like you said, you know, pressure test, you know, it doesn't hurt, you know, yes, they are, you know, similar oils, but, you know, flushing a line set, I think is a good practice. You know, if we're going to, you know, take old equipment and put new and reuse, absolutely. Yeah, so you got that on the leak side. So keep throwing in your questions. We're going to move on here towards the product side. So this is some of the more exciting, you know, news we've gotten in a little while.
I guess there's some changes with the webinar app or how it looks. I'm not really sure, but that certainly isn't something we're controlling, obviously, the upgrade or whatever, the new look.
Oh, for what we're doing today?
Yes.
Yeah, if you can elaborate a little bit, Emmanuel.
I guess maybe there was an issue. Maybe he's not used to seeing certain things, certain places. I'm not sure.
Oh, could be. Okay. So, you know, as we kind of get into the product transition, like I said, you know, you got questions, still got some concerns, throw them out there. We're here to answer all of them, make you feel comfortable, you know, moving forward. And that doesn't change, right? You got our contact numbers in the handouts, so you could always reach out to us via email, phone, anything you need. We got a lot of, just want to touch on too, we got a lot of friends here from our distributor channels. So those are also great resources as well if you have questions, and if they don't have the answers, you know, they can get in touch with us or the manufacturer and we can get those answers to you. So don't be shy.
Yeah, there's, you know, the questions here, high side, low side stuff because of the EEV and where we're located. We typically don't have too much of those.
Well, that's not going to change us. I mean, when you're talking about your pressures in the system, you know, if you look at a 410, now if you have a PT chart, if you're using Fujitsu's mobile technician app, we do have a PT chart that shows 410A, and it's digital, obviously being an app, but we have 410A R32s on there as well. So you can put in a saturation temperature and it's going to show you your pressure. So if you want to compare them yourself and see what the differences are, I'm going to tell you right now, 410A to R32, we're talking a couple PSI difference, you know, it's not a huge difference. So whatever your numbers that you're seeing on a 410A world right now, they're going to be very similar on the R32 world. So you're not going to see a big difference there. But that's another, just to kind of plug the app, there's a lot of good things going on there. There is and it's been there for a little while now, if you've been poking around, there is a RCL or refrigerant concentration limit calculator on there where you can put in your volumes and refrigerant charge, and it'll tell you, you know, if you're in compliance, I guess you could say, if it's, you know, good to go. So definitely some stuff coming on in that app. You know, we've been seeing some changes and updates and all of that stuff. So thanks, Emmanuel. Yep. Appreciate it, man. All right, so as we kind of get into the product transition, right? So there's been some changes. There's been a lot of changes in maybe the wording, the names, you know, the, I guess you could call our tiers now, right? So I kind of laid this out, make it a little bit easier for you guys. And this is all in that, I think it's, what is it, a 4 or 5 page product.
Yeah, one of the handouts that we have.
Yeah, it's one of the handouts you got there, product notification. So what we've done now is we've kind of named and identified the different series and tiers and all of that stuff. So just kind of starting at the top here, our high tier, that's a new addition, the Orion XLTH Plus, right? So that is we didn't have a top tier, we had a high tier. That's where we were with the XLTH and the Orion series. The Plus gets us some benefits, and we're going to talk about them as we move forward, but that's a whole new animal right there, and it's going to get us some, you know, impressive numbers, as you'll see in a few minutes, right? So we got our, as I mentioned, high tier. We've got the addition now, the Altair 700, 500, 300. So that's going to work as mid-tier on a 700. The Altair series is really just covering all of our single-zone wall-mounted systems. So we got our mid-tiers up there in the 700. We got and you'll see what that's compatible or comparison to, you know, what we've replaced that with in a few minutes. But The 500 is going to be our standard tier plus, we're calling it. The Altair 300 is, we have it in the 220 volt series, and then we also have it in our 120 volt. The 220 volt entry tier, that's new to us, so we've kind of added that as more of a budget brand, you know, so if we're entry level right there. The Centauri name, that's going to cover all of our non-wall mount, right? So that's our AGU floor mounts. That's going to be our, you know, little slim duct units. That could be our cassettes, multi-position air handlers, mid-statics, all of that stuff, as you'll see in a few minutes. And then the Aguila is going to cover all of our multi-zone, and we've had some good stuff going on there.
I say Aquila.
Yeah. We got some questions. John, good to see you, as always. Been a long time. Will we be able to remove? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There are tools, and if you can't do them now, it's because you don't have the right tools. So you can do them on all the existing equipment we have now. It's
Core
just
removal tools.
having the right stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. If you're talking
Yep.
about the service valves, yes.
Absolutely. Good question. Good question.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into some of the nomenclature. This is one of our favorites, you know, to kind of talk about because it's important. Whether it's you're calling us with a concern, a problem, troubleshooting, looking for parts and pieces, you know, whether it's you're calling us or our distributor friends out there. You know, when you go to the counter and say, hey, I got a 36, you know, and I need, you know, so-and-so part, right? Well, there's a bunch of different 36 models out there,
yeah.
you know, and there's different revisions. And,
We have
and
single ones
series
now,
and,
and you know,
yeah,
in
there's
the past.
big differences. So it's very important when you show up, like I said, either whether it's a phone call or you're at the counter and you're looking for something, to have all the letters and numbers, right? So, you know, I got a little, just a sample here from a head unit I was on the other day on a troubleshooting call, but, you know, we'll blow that up. Let me advance that real quick. So you'll see, you know, our transition here. Here's our model number on this head unit. It's an ASU G12 LZBS. So what does that mean, right? So to the right, and it might be a little bit small, and again, if you should be able to enlarge this. If not, you'll have the recording, which will be on our YouTube channel, which you'll be able to kind of blow this up. This is also in the handouts too, so you can kind of download that, and it's part of that product page that we put in there.
Sure.
I'm going to try and blow this up a little bit more so some of you guys can see this a little bit more. But basically, the first letter that we go with is going to be your North America, right? A. Everything starts with an A. We call that America, right? And then your next one is, the next letter is going to designate whether it be an outdoor unit for O, right? Or a wall mount, which we used to call a standard unit, was NS. We got the ceiling, what is it?
B.
Suspended, which is a B. So we'd have an ABU.
And the B was for both
Right, a universal.
wall
right?
or
wall or
ceiling.
Yep,
Sure.
absolutely. You know, we had a multi-position air handler. You might see an M there, right? So that's going to designate what piece of equipment you're actually working on.
All right.
And then let me see if I can blow this up for you guys here to make this a little bit easier to see. There we go. So
Beautiful.
your L is now basically going to designate your power source, right? So if I had a 115 system, you know, that's going to be an L. If I had a 208, 230, that's going to be a U. So if I had an outdoor unit, we would call that AOU, right? That's American Outdoor Unit, and it's 208, 230 volt. The next letter we're going to see that's pretty new, you know, this kind of goes back to the 410A equipment as well. We would deal with this, is going to be our generation, right? So we had AOUGs, now we're into the H's, right? So even going back to that, let me see if I can get out of here.
The label.
There we go.
Yeah.
So you can see there that indoor head is a G generation, right? So all the heads that you're going to start seeing now are going to be H's. So you'll see an ASU H, right? And then we have the 12, which is going to designate our BTU class, right? So that's going to be the model number there of capacity. And if I move this up here, you'll see everything from 7,000 BTUs all the way up to 48,000 in a 4-ton system, right? So let's come back up here to the next one, the more important one, right? We see next to the number, we have a letter K. Well, if I scroll down here, what does K mean? It's going to be all the way at the bottom. K means R32. So that's where you're going to notice, right? If you had an L after the number, that would be 410A. So all the stuff you currently see. As you start to see the equipment getting transitioned into the distributor and out into your hands, after that number you see a K, you're going to know right off the bat that that's a R32 piece of equipment. The next letter from that is going to tell you what tier level we're talking about, right? So you can see that we got the product tier, everything from the top tier I just mentioned down to W, which is going to be your multi-zone. If I scroll back up here, so that would be K for R32, W over here would be for our multi-zone. The next letter here, that's going to designate our series, and that's going to be A through Z, right? So that may change on you. The S, that's going to tell us whether it's a standard unit, maybe an XLTH, which was, if you guys are familiar with our H models, we call them our -15 equipment. And the big change going forward now, because of R32 and the higher efficiencies, is we have this new category called XLTH plus, right? And what that basically does now, instead of -15, we're down to -22.
That's right.
Right, so
There's
we'll have
that R32 advantage.
R32 advantage, right? So now what's cool about that is, yes, we were -15 before. Going to -22, what that does as far as performance is we're going to get 100% of our rated heating coming out of that machine down to -15, and then 90% of our capacity down to -22. Right. So again, where we're based out of today, Long Island, you know, we see temperatures like that. I will not be here. I'm doing this webinar somewhere a lot warmer. But, another new addition is this last number, right? So what you're going to notice now on some of the single zone systems, you're going to have a 1, right? And then if you look at the end on a multi-zone, if you had, let's call it a 2-ton, right? That's giving us the capabilities of 3 heads. So at the end of that multi-zone condenser, you're going to see the number 3. So that's going to tell you how many indoor units we could potentially hook up to that system. We go up to 5, that being our 45 model, right? So that's another multi-zone piece.
Just be aware, I can't let this go, is that because the model has a certain capacity, that's at a tested temperature. So when you're talking about these -15s, -22s, you still need to understand what the capacity BTUs we're actually producing. You know, don't overstate, or, you know, it's just a downfall. I think people here up until now, -15, and they upsell into the customer and thinking this is going to carry the load of the house, but really they never looked at what the -15 capacities really are.
Right.
So just be a little cautious when you're kind of over embellishing maybe on what a -15.
But that's why we
-22s.
We have what we call our design and technical manual, right? And that's something that, you know, we got to dig into more when it comes down to performance, and you want to know what this machine's actually going to do at a given temperature. That's where you're going to find all that information. All right.
Sitting at 9:05. How we doing out there?
Everybody still alive?
Yeah, everyone's still. We had a question about replacing on maybe VRF and branch boxes, and I believe that's.
So that's a whole different animal.
Yeah,
there's a little different transition, so that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, going forward on any older systems, you're going to start seeing that availability to repair because the product as a replacement won't be there.
Yeah.
So parts will be. In that case where you're asking about the branch box, I don't know if it's a individual component in there, maybe it's a board, yeah, that might be, or is the whole branch box considered a replacement part?
It could be.
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Depending on your system. John, we can carry that offline if you'd like, if you have some other concerns there. But yeah, VRF is going to be a different transition.
Yeah, so. Leaking indoor coils. Coil will be a replacement part.
Absolutely.
You know? So again, you know, taking down the refrigerant, recovery, repair, charge, confirm, weigh in anew.
That's it. All right, let's run through these series right now, and then we'll kind of get into the roadmap of when you're going to see some of this stuff, right? So starting with the Orion XLTH Plus, you know, SEER ratings up to 33.5 on that SEER 2 level now we're dealing with. You can see the operation range there, 14 to 122 on the cooling side and -22 on the heating, right? So you'll notice, you know, another way we get to that -22 is keeping those piping lengths a little bit shorter, right? Because you're going to notice on the next one, on the non-plus, we call it the -15 model, we could go a lot further with the line sets, but by doing that, we compromise maybe some performance at lower temperatures, right? The more line set we have, the more BTUs we got in there and not in the coils, obviously we kind of restrict some of the BTUs we can give you. So we are rated heating capacity up to 133% of our nominal capacity, right? And that's kind of, where we get people stuck on, all right, I bought a 9, I can only do 9. No,
Right.
That's a powerful piece of machine, up to 133%. That 9 can actually do a lot more, which is pretty cool. And there, as I stated before, 100% heating capacity at -15, 90% at -22. We're still giving you the base pan heater, backlit wireless remote control. So they actually have luminous buttons now. So if you haven't seen them yet, that's a nice addition. This system does have built-in Wi-Fi, so if they do want to control it, it's already there.
Right. Keep them off the ground in cold climates, please.
Oh, that's everything. Yeah,
Please.
We're dealing heat pumps, man. So here is the H, just the standard H that you guys have seen, the -15. As you can see, we go from 66 feet. Now we can go up to 164, so almost an extra 100 feet of line set.
Yeah.
But again, just because we can go that far, you need to understand that there may be some, we're limiting how many BTUs we're actually putting into space. And again, that all comes out of our design and technical manual. So if you have questions or concerns, let us know. We'll show you where to get that info.
Again, look at the positives here, some big improvements on efficiencies, right? So we do have this thing changing, but with that change, okay, there's a balance. Yeah, we got to be concerned, but then we get all this great stuff.
Yep.
Neat stuff.
So moving into the Altair, the 700, 500, and 300 there, still high efficiency, 30 SEER, right? So it's up there, cooling capacity 14 to 122, and this piece of equipment, heating capacity down to 5 degrees. Right? So again, depending on the system, we have different line set lengths, as you can see there. Let's see if we miss anything.
Actually, they're all down to 5.
They're all down to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, on a heating side, I don't know if this was a typo, but I don't think it is. I know being an entry level, right? Cooling on the 300 series is only down to 50 degrees. Right? So where you can see on some of these other units, we can cool down to 14, and you say, well, why do I need cooling below 50? Well, there may be some applications where, residentially, you have a lot of people coming around in the wintertime. It's with holidays, you're always, entertaining. You
Could
may
be health
want some
reasons.
AC. Could be health reasons for
Yeah.
sure. May have a little computer room, server room, whatever. All this new stuff, technology going on. It's always good to keep it cool.
The 115 keeps the conversation going when the electrical panel can't supply
100%.
enough power for. So just be aware of that cooling capacity.
Absolutely. So the big difference too, going from the Orion down to the Altair series, is they are Wi-Fi capable. They just don't come with a module. So you have to buy the separate module to plug into the device, where the Orion is going to come all ready to go for you. Anything there we want to touch on?
I'm not saying you can't zoom in to take a look at anything in the app. Definitely, you guys have to work on this, please. Okay. We'll call them.
Yeah, if you're doing it on the phone, obviously that may be a challenge. So.
Yeah, that's a good question. Is it on the phone that you're doing this, or desktop, laptop?
So moving forward, so those were all your wall-mounted units. Now we get into the Centauri, which is now all about non-wall mounted, right? So what's non-wall mounted? Ceiling suspended or floor, right? So that's kind of our ABU. We got our mid-static unit. So that's another nice unit we've had for a little while. Compact cassette, the large cassette. So those are all, same systems you've been seeing, different nomenclature, some different benefits there.
Do you want to discuss the slim duct versus the mid, or no?
Not yet. I mean, on a single zone, so that's one of the big changes we did make, if that's what you're talking about, is, single zone, we used to offer that slim duct, the small, very low capacity ductwork unit as a single. That's now available in a multi only, and the mid static is going to be the mini air handler that you're going to see going from 12,000 BTUs all the way up to 4.
There's a little shift in the lineup, and the mid static now is going smaller. They removed the single slim duct, which is only available in the multi.
Exactly.
So it's a little bit of shifting and like flipping pages, like where to go. So
yeah,
I don't think it's as recent as this handout. It might have been something 6-8 months ago, I guess.
Exactly. So one of the big changes with anything that you can add, and this is the way I kind of look at it all, is anything that I can hook up ductwork to, I'm going to have a refrigerant detection device in there. And this isn't something you have to add to the machine. This is coming from the factory. It's already wired up, ready to go. But the mid-static, and you'll see it here if I advance this, has a built-in refrigerant leak detection sensor in there. It is replaceable, and it will have to be replaced at some point because it's a sensor. It's moving airflow through it, so they will have a time where you're going to have to replace this. So there is, there are different various error codes. 2 of them for the sensor. One of them is going to tell you that you actually had a compromise. The other one is actually going to have the other error code is that it's basically end of life and you need to replace it. All right. I think that's Chris there asking that. I know there's been a discussion. We've been asked for many years, on this slim one-way that's inside of a joist bay. I know it's a popular item for guys that are doing by others right now.
There's no teasers. I don't know the answer to that.
I know that it's a conversation, and I don't know the progression of that conversation. If we're going to see something like it, I'm just going to give you my opinion. It's cool to install day one. If you have a full access above to service it in the future, great.
Yeah.
Most of the installations I've seen, they're putting a ceiling in a living room with a second floor addition on it, where there is zero access to any serviceability, any serviceability down the road.
Or the outside walls with the roof line above, so tight.
Or even 10 years from now when the equipment needs to be replaced, like a wall mount unit can always replace with a wall mount, so it's a cool little, addition to maybe their lineups. I don't know if we're going to be a Me Too and kind of follow it, but we can find out for you. Absolutely.
We like it, we look at it.
I think it all has its space, like I said, if you're giving it the room for serviceability, then it becomes a better conversation. Just my opinion.
It's good opinion.
Yeah. So again, getting back to that leak detection, that's kind of what it's going to look like. Little tiny board, it's not that big. It's a little tiny device that's in the side of the machine near the coil. So if it did detect a compromise of refrigerant, you're going to get the alert. You're going to get the error on there. So moving forward for the multi-zone, right? So this is kind of our Agila, right? So we have our low temperature, extra low temperature heating down to -15. Not a lot of changes there performance-wise. There's still some things to come. The big addition, and I'm gonna wait a second till I get to the next couple slides to kind of pull that out because it is pretty exciting. So we didn't give you a one-way, Chris, but we get you something better. Bear with me. All right, so product transition. This is kind of like the dates, and you guys all have this in your handout, so if you can't see it as clear, can't zoom in, whether it's on YouTube later on, you should have access to it. But basically the way these charts are going to work is you're going to have the new equipment here, whether it be your outdoor and indoor. So these are the new model numbers that you're going to see. You're going to see for the distributor side of our business, right? When can we order it? When can we design it? When can we order it? And when is it going to ship to us, right? So that kind of gives you an idea. And these dates, obviously, things can happen, but this is kind of an idea on when you're going to start to see some of this stuff. And then based on, all right, in this Orion Plus, the first one you're seeing, all the way to the right for outdoor, indoor equivalent, there is none, right? Because that was a new addition, -22. Right? So if you look below in the standard XLTH, same deal, but now under equivalent, you're going to see what models we did replace and what is that new model number. So it's going to give you an idea. If you guys like certain models and you work on certain units all the time and that's your go-to, take a look at these charts, look for that model number on the right-hand side, and then you'll get the right equipment. This way you're getting the same stuff you were getting in the past, just with added features and performance, all right? Right-hand side, not a ton to talk about. Again, we did have the new addition here on the Altair, on the 300. That's that entry level, so there is no equivalent right now, but that's a new one for us. I think we'll do pretty good with that for guys that are coming in, and maybe price is an issue. That might be something that will help you keep a job and not lose it. So
yeah, we have a lot more competitions. There's a lot more names in the game of mini splits. So
yep, absolutely, and that's it's a good range from 9,000 to 24,000. So
sure,
we should do good with that.
Again, don't get locked into that number and the model number being a BTU capacity, because these things are outperforming that rated plate number. And D&T, or design and technical manual, is really what you want to dive into. if you have any questions, just let us know. It's all available with every model. Every model has one.
Yep. So changes on this side was, so these are our non-wall mount, right? So these are our ceiling suspended, our cassettes, multi-position air handlers. So as I say that, that's the first one I'm going to touch on, right? So multi-position air handlers, we now have the addition of a 12 and an 18 on the way. So we'll see them probably towards the end of the summer, I'm going to say, when they start hitting your shelves out there, and you guys can start purchasing, hopefully. So that's a nice addition on the single zone, right? We also have on our mid-static units the addition to 3 more models, and these are going to really get us into the H models, right? So we'll get some better performance there out to the 4-ton. And then we also, on a large cassette, we did the same thing. Some of the larger sizes now have the ability to have an H model as well. So those are the big additions there on non-wall mounted equipment. This is where I was a little excited on a multi-zone. Again, we didn't change a lot. Obviously, the performance changes, some of the features on the indoor units that change a little bit, the look a little bit, but we still have the same multi-zone, right? So the standard units, 18, 24, 36, 45, right? So whether you need a 2-head combination or all the way up to a 5-head, that still stays the same. We have the same, H models there, 18, 24, 36. On the indoor units, though, we have, because of that addition on the multi-position air handler and the, what was the other one we added? The mid-static units, we now have added the multi-position and mid-static to the multi-zone lineup, which is, I think, something a lot of guys have been asking for a while, including myself. So now you'll have the ability to put a 3-ton multi-zone outdoor unit and maybe put a, 2, but even you could probably even do a wall mount in a basement and do 2 air handlers, 1-ton air handlers, and that's something that a lot of guys have been asking for. So those combinations will start coming out too as the new literature gets published, the new apps, get updated and stuff like that, as far as compatibility and
that's been a want for a while, so that's good to see.
Yeah, that's been a huge want. Same time frame, looks like it's going to be, probably the end of the summer for us is when we're going to start to see it. So you guys are still going to have that 410A equipment kind of going into the beginning of the year as we kind of transition, and you start getting fed some of the newer R32 equipment.
Yeah, it's going to get a little rough before it gets easier to say that out loud. I think, with projections and what's coming in and what's soon to be arriving, the old versus the new, yeah, we're going to be seeing a little bit of a repairs needed more than replacement.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how are we doing on questions as we're kind of wrapping up here? That's kind of the end of the product transition right there. Yeah. I'm just going to touch and plug a couple places real quick.
Manuel had said goodbye, so he's gone, and he's all about the app.
I think we got all the questions answered, right?
Yep. If I go down, or here's the latest, which was, yeah, we're good. We're good on the questions.
Beautiful. So like I said before, we're going to, you have some handouts. Please take them before we exit here. This was recorded, so this will be placed on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So you will have access to this, at any point. Christiane, good to see you on here this morning. So, again, we just want to, ESCO, has been great with this, putting these presentations together. They do a good job. They got some great videos too. If you follow them, they got their own training, page on YouTube. I know they've done some work with Navic. They got some great stuff on Navic's page. Learned a lot from those guys too about the tooling, and they did a great video. I think you watched it the other day as well on the proper procedures of doing a recovery, on doing an evacuation, pressure testing, the whole 9, and just some more awareness maybe on some of the newer tools that'll help you do your job a little bit better and quicker.
AHRI also has a great resource for this whole transition.
Yep.
So I think ESCO and them, they were in cahoots. They're doing some things. So
ASHRAE.
Yeah, ASHRAE, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, ASHRAE has a ton, and that's kind of where the application guide that you guys have in your handouts came from too, is based on all the ASHRAE standards. And if you want to learn how to calculate, based on, if you have a higher volume, because what you're going to run into is on some applications, you're going to have to design them properly now, is refrigerant concentration is going to be a big thing. And if you have a certain amount of refrigerant, you know, maybe that system is not, you know, compatible for residential at that point, you
Right.
know, and that's where the concerns are going to come in on the design side.
Like a multi-head put into maybe the volume, as we
Yeah.
were discussing, total volume of the system.
Yep.
Into a capacity, you know, a space of such size.
Right.
Maybe a small bedroom, you know.
Yeah.
What is that volume versus
Yeah, and that's
free air?
part of the calculation, correct. So Jason, good to see you too. We are not, I mean, you're going to see the same multi that you had, you know, going in through the summer, you know, finishing out the winter here. Then we're going to, you know, there will be a transition to a different vendor, and that's going to give us that addition, you know, those other smaller units, the 12 and 18. So we will be able to do all of that stuff going forward. Hopefully that answers your question. All
All right,
right.
guys, sitting up at 8:23 to be with the numbers here on the clock. Anything
Yeah, I don't wanna
else
keep
that
you
we
too
can help
long.
you?
9:23.
Or 9:23, I'm sorry.
It's all right. All good. All good. All right. Well, we're gonna hang out here for 2 more seconds. If any more questions pop up. If not, you know where to reach us.
Great job,
Appreciate
Rick.
you
Thank
guys. Yeah, had some fun this morning. At least just trying to get that information out. Again, it's not a certification. There's no certificates coming your way. You know, there are some, you know, trainings out there, refrigerant based, you know, for the proper authorities that do that stuff to get certified, just like there was for 410A. So definitely check it out. I know the refrigerant manufacturers are doing their own classes as well. So it's good, deeper dive.
One thing I don't know if we mentioned, but the left-handed thread, the adapters.
So that's on the tank itself.
Yeah,
that's,
just be aware of
something.
those. There's even some, you know, maybe hand changes too, you know, with some more tools. So
Yeah.
they're going to want you to understand that left-hand threads, adapters, maybe. So
Yeah, and yeah, so Richie, we're definitely going to get that information out there. We're trying to, I don't know if it's going to be identical to what we're seeing right now on the air stage side, and I know Chris is with us today. He might have that answer. I don't know if you want to plug it in there, Chris, but we're having a question we're getting is, the cabinet size is going to change on the multi-zone systems with the transition. And I'm sure they will a little bit, but we can dig in that a little bit deeper for you, Rich.
thank you, Ray. You have a great day.
Yeah.
Happy Friday.
I believe it's fine.
Yeah.
No answer on it? Okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so we don't have that info right now, Rich. I'll do some digging and push some buttons and see what we can find out for you. But yeah, we might not find that out until when we're closer towards that August, September timeframe, you know. As soon as we know, we'll get it out to you, though.
All right.
All right, guys. I think we're going to say goodbye. Appreciate you guys joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a good one.